This channel is part of the History Hit network.
This is Norfolk. Over there's the sea. The ground round here is pretty flat and exposed, except for this little hill here, on the top of which is this deserted church. Now, we know that it's Norman, but all around here in the fields, people have been coming across pieces of metal that go back as far as the Iron Age. In fact, this is probably the richest site we've yet come across in Time Team. So, what was this place? What was going on here? Was it a settlement? In which case, what kind of people settled here? And can we find out in just 3 days? To make matters worse, we're covering this whole dig live. In fact, some of you may have seen the live shows that went out last August. But as yet, I haven't got a clue what's going to happen. All I can tell you is that this weekend is going to be pretty exciting. This is our site. It's huge. It's ½ a kilometre from one end to the other. This hill has never been excavated, but over the years people have come across an enormous number of finds here, many of them dating from the Saxon period. At the far end we have the ruined church, but we also have a remarkable aerial photograph. Together with the finds, it suggests that at one time there was an enormous settlement here. It's a pretty good snap, isn't it?
It's amazing how much is showing up.
Information.
You can look at this for weeks, but what really shows up well is this enclosure.
Yeah.
It's huge, doesn't it? It could
Sort
go
of boundary.
right round there. Yeah, a huge ditch.
So what are we going to do with it?
Well, I think we want one or more sections across that to start with,
I
to
think
find out what date it is.
Several trenches and try and track. I mean, it's quite clear here, but it gets increasingly confused there. If we can try and track it round.
Well, I think that confused area there, we've got to come in with the geophysics, but also do some field walking and some metal detector surveying and try and sort out what sort of material we get.
I mean,
from
that confused area, as you put it, I mean, that's the one that goes for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's something really exciting going on there.
There's a little enclosure or something like that, isn't it?
What sort of periods are we looking at, Andrew?
Well, we've had finds from this hill ranging from the Neolithic, Bronze Age, Iron Age, Roman period and Anglo-Saxon times.
That's pretty comprehensive.
Is there any one period that looks like it's going to be particularly promising?
The really exciting bit, I think, is going to be the Middle Saxon. That's the 7th, 8th, 9th centuries, where we have some wonderful finds.
What about the Norman church?
Well, the Norman church is the one bit you can actually see above ground, obviously, a nice little ruin there. And there was an excavation there in the 1930s, but there are almost no records of what they found. They apparently got an east end, a rounded east end, an apse, and we would like to have that re-excavated to see if we can find out what was actually there.
Our first job is to try to find the boundary of the settlement, so we open Trench 1 over part of the crop mark on the aerial photograph. If this is the boundary, Carenza will then start to look for dating evidence within it.
So the wall will come along straight for a little bit.
Straight for a bit, and then it'll turn.
Curve in.
We also open a trench at the church. Neil, Holbrook and Andrew are trying to work out where it should go.
OK, let's go.
They're looking for the eastern apse and any earlier parts of the structure. This church is an impressive building with the tower in the centre, which makes it rare. It suggests that it was very important. And the material already found here suggests a high-status site. This is a stylus, a mid-Saxon pen largely used by monks. It suggests that there was a monastery of some sort here. And we ought to find burials close to the church. If we do, we may find evidence of very early occupation. Stuart's already out and about, doing something strange. Geophysics have also started. The sandy soil here is difficult for them to read, but they've adjusted their equipment and are doing what they can. Helping us on the site is an army of field walkers. And we have a large number of metal detectorists. Mick and I take a drive down to the incident room to find out what's happening down there.
History Hit is like Netflix, just for history fans. With exclusive history documentaries covering some of the most famous people and events in history, just for you. With familiar faces such as Dan Jones and Dr. Eleanor Yanega, we've got hundreds of documentaries covering the greatest figures and events of medieval history. We're committed to bringing history fans award-winning documentaries and podcasts that you cannot find anywhere else. Sign up now for a free trial, and Chronicle fans get 50% off their first 3 months. Just be sure to use the code Chronicle at checkout.
I want to ask you about metal detecting, Mick, because
Yeah.
you said rather enthusiastically that you thought that we were going to start doing some metal detecting, but you used to loathe metal detectors, the great robbers of archaeology.
That's right, and that's still true to some extent. I mean, I think we have to see there's two swords. There's metal detectorists who work with archaeologists on projects, and it's just another piece of equipment to record as much evidence as possible. And then there's that very, very small minority of what are really robber treasure hunters who are busy, pinching bits of our heritage and flogging them off. We can work with the people who are going to work as part of the project.
How do you use a metal detector well? What does that mean?
Well, when you're field walking and you're collecting bits of pottery and so on, you use metal detectors to get your metal at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's part and parcel of the collection. Head for that door down there, look, that's the back of the incident room.
Past our enormous scanner trucks.
Yeah, that's my lunch, I hope. In there.
Well,
And we can do a lot with that then. That's useful information, you see.
let's hope so. Right, here we are. In the incident room, we're already busy. Sue's working on some maps for Stuart to try to put the area into some sort of perspective.
Well, what I've been doing is trying to work out the relationship of the site to the coastline. You can see here that we're trapped in land. The red dot marks the site, and the coastline's about 7 kilometres to the northwest. The coastline looked very different from the prehistoric period onwards. You can see here that was the coastline, and that our site is actually on a slight peninsula. If you looked at it in more detail, the island where our church is actually physically separate from the landscape around it. It is a very unique piece of topography compared to the rest of the coastline. You can see on the next slide, again, just how very easily accessible it is to the coastline, and still Steve's building up a 3D model to help us try and add all bits onto it where the archaeology was and so on.
Just finished rendering. You can see we've got the digital terrain information in, we've got that skin, we've got OS map on top of it, and if we come around there, see our place is highlighted in yellow in the middle. Come around there, we can see more of the lumps and bumps, and on comes the flood level. So that's going to be a good base to put anything that we find on top of.
We're also joined by Sandi Toksvig, who's helping the field walkers. And we have our first find. Amazingly, it's Saxon.
It's a little Anglo-Saxon silver coin known as a skeet or shatter, 8th century.
Wonderful.
Just turned up from down
And was
here.
that a field walker?
It's
or was
a
it
metal detector. Yeah.
That is thrilling. Can I hold it?
Yes, sure. Here you are.
So what's it made of? What is it?
Silver.
Oh, and what would it have been worth, Andrew, in Anglo-Saxon times? Is it a lot or a little bit of money?
Well, it would have been called a penny,
Right.
but we're talking about a time when there wasn't, in our sense of the word, a really developed monetary economy, and it would have had quite a specialised use, probably most likely for tribute to the king.
Oh, so not worth a huge amount?
Not a huge amount, but something very much more than the sort of pennies that we're used to.
Well worth spending a penny in Anglo-Saxon times.
Quite absolutely right.
Okay, well
yes.
look, I'm going to give that into your safe care and leave you to plot it exactly on the graph so we know we found it.
We'll do that right
And
now.
I've got overexcited, I'm going to go look for another one.
Do.
And in fact, across the site, we found a second at around the same time.
It's an Anglo-Saxon coin for a start, and on this side there's a rounded bit of ear.
Oh,
and
that's
on the
his
other
ear, is it?
side, yes, there's an angular bit of nose.
Not very flattering.
No, huge nose.
With a bit of work, could we get a more accurate date on that? do you
Yes,
think?
we could get a date to within 10 years, and we could probably get a king and a moneyer.
How valuable would it have been? I mean, is this something that would have been...
It's not your loose change.
In fact, this coin dates from 700 to 715 AD. It was minted in the Lower Rhineland by a coin maker called Epper. And Sandi's coin dates from the same time, from 700 to 710. Both these coins are very rare finds, and they firmly place our site in the Middle Saxon period.
Yeah, Carenza, what have we got here?
Over at Trench 1, Carenza's making good progress.
We found the ditch that was showing up in the air photograph and the geophysics. We've got one edge of it here. You can see the change from the sort of light, chalky soil to the darker brown stuff. And then the other side, it's about 5 metres wide. The other side of it's coming through here. I mean, it feels sort of Iron Age to me at the moment, just by the sort of size of it, really. And we can find out what date it is and what shape it is, and then we can see if that feature that's over there is the same thing, and then maybe we'll be able to track it all around.
Yeah, I think that seems quite reasonable.
At Trench 2 by the church, forensic archaeologist Margaret Cox has a find that requires some care.
I can tell you found something.
Yes, we've got a human skull, which may be part of something bigger, maybe a whole body.
So it could be attached, but you can't tell at the moment?
No, we need to excavate a bit more of this fill away in order to see whether it is a complete body or just disarticulated.
And is the suit to protect you from it or it from you?
No, it from me, so that we can do DNA analysis, and what we won't get is my DNA coming up loud and clear.
Right.
So
and is it a Christian burial, do you think?
Well, it's not going in the right direction for a normal Christian burial, but that's assuming this is a grave in the first place, so we shall see.
Crack on. Good luck.
At the far end of the trench, we have the beginning of something exciting, and the more we dig, the better it begins to look. Off to one side of the site, we've built a Saxon village. Here, we've got people recreating various aspects of life in Saxon times. Minting coins, weaving, and some cooking. And across the next 3 days, Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall will join them in an effort to recreate this piece of jewellery found on the site.
Russell, you're our expert Saxon craftsman. What are we looking at here?
We're looking at an Anglo-Saxon strap end that possibly hung from a belt. It's been made by a master craftsman himself.
Is this something we could possibly attempt to have a go at in our cameo village?
In our cameo village, it would be difficult. We'd have to cast the bronze, we'd have to mate in the yellow, we'd have to inlay the silver wire. It'd be difficult, but we could have a go.
Okie doke. So we're going to take this over here, and I believe, Victor, you're attempting to reproduce this in wax. Is that a bit of a challenge?
That's right. It's going to be very tough. The technique's called the lost wax process, and what Victor's doing is going to make a master out of wax, which in turn will be pressed into clay. The clay will then be fired to bake the clay mould, remove the wax, and then into the void in the mould will be poured bronze. And hopefully, when we crack it open, we'll find a similar basic master to that which has been cast.
That's quite a big hopefully there.
Well, let's have a go.
But complicated as it is, he's got 2 days to do it. Then geophysics throws another target our way. They've just done this corner of the site, over a crop mark that looks like it could be some sort of entranceway or a harbour. The results look pretty clear.
So the church is here, Tony.
Yeah.
We've got the modern track, we've got a clear ditch, and then this clear curving second ditch, which may be the harbour, as you say.
Well, yeah, we're right down on the edge of the marsh there, so we might have a harbour or all sorts of things. It might be the entrance, the ditch turning round into an entrance into this big enclosure on the air pictures.
So we prepare to open our third trench. Is this some sort of entranceway? And what's its relationship with Carenza's boundary?
Stop, back 2, and then do it at the right angle.
Phil's nursing a slipped disc, so he's into supervising this weekend, but John Gator's pretty sure he knows what he's doing.
That should get the one ditch coming through on this line, and then the curve coming round, and you'll get the 2 separate ditches and where they cut each other.
Wow.
And I reckon that the straight one is later.
You can give me the dates for them as well, eh?
In the incident room, we're working on the skull found in Trench 2. It's medieval and was probably buried here 500 or 600 years ago. Up at the trench, we've uncovered a floor from the same sort of period. This is lovely, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is fantastic. It's a 15th century glazed medieval floor, 2 colours, and it's all imported. It's all come from Holland and Low Countries, brought over in huge quantities in boats. Just think of all that weight coming over across the North Sea.
Andrew, you're pretty excited about this, aren't you?
Indeed I am, but I've actually got something even better here. Part of a slightly older tile, 14th century, and it's got the word Thomas stamped on it, but backwards.
T-H-O-M-A.
Why is it backwards?
Because the die to stamp the tile was made by one person who could write, but didn't think it would be reversed when he actually stamped the tile, I'm afraid.
This floor is a wonderful discovery. A floor like this suggests an important building, and the outline of it gives us an idea of what the building may have looked like. We can now show that the east end was rounded in Norman times, but we don't have any evidence of buildings standing here before the Normans built this church, so we close this trench down and decide to look elsewhere. Just north of the church, geophysics, using a rather odd new electromagnetic system, find a feature which could be a boundary ditch. There's a lot of activity on the geophysics, so we open a new trench, Trench 4. Here in the incident room, Mick and John Blair have been having a few more thoughts about how they can solve some of the mysteries surrounding the layout of the place. You're beginning to think it looks like some other sites, aren't you?
Yes, I think it's fitting pretty clearly into a pattern of enclosed Anglo-Saxon monastic sites. We can see this if we look at one that's very like it. Here at Bampton in Oxfordshire, there's a very similar sort of enclosure, just a bit smaller. It's got a boundary ditch of the same sort of width, about 4 metres. It's near a watercourse over there on the left. And it's got a church in one corner sitting on a natural mound. But there is one site at Brandon in Suffolk which has been excavated extensively. We've got the whole western half of an island, very similar to this one, in fact, with a causeway approaching it from down there. There's a waterfront on the northern edge with industrial buildings. There's a scatter of small domestic buildings, and then there are 2 churches at the heart of the site, one there inside the earthwork and one to the south.
2 churches? So there could be more than one in ours?
Yeah, there's often more than one on these sites, sometimes in line along the top of a ridge or sometimes parallel to each other.
Up at Trench 4, the trench is just getting longer. It seems to be John Gator's fault again, but why?
We've got an amazing series of ditches, some straight, some curving, boundary ditches, possible trackway coming in here.
Yeah.
And then outside of these ditches, we've got this area of what I call noise, strong magnetic signals. Yeah. And I just wonder whether that is actually a bell pit.
What's a bell pit?
Where they cast the bells for the church. They make a hole in the ground to cast them.
So is that why we're digging this trench then?
Yeah, we're just putting in a small trench, 25 metres by 5.
Come on, why are we making it so big?
Well, the thing is, we want to pick up the boundary and also look at these industrial type responses outside.
We know that these sites, there was a lot of metalworking, making knives and so on. They were also making bronze objects. And of course, they may have been making tiles, they may have been lead working, and there's often these areas around the outside.
So this actually could be a key trench?
Yeah, because you see, so often people bother with the church and forget the rest.
One day into this fantastic site, and we've got trenches all over the place. We found 2 beautiful, tiny Anglo-Saxon coins, and this trench has been a great exercise with that fantastic floor. But we still haven't got to the heart of the place. What really was going on here? That's a job for tomorrow. It's a bit of an early start for Sue and for John.
If you just get the high point, we put a peg there and then...
It's 8:30, and already we're trying to open another trench. We think that this could be an earlier building, and it fits in with the layout of similar sites, which suggest a line of churches across the top of the hill. So we open a new trench, Trench 5, across the track from the church. Across the site at Trench 1, our search for the boundary has widened. We've now opened a second trench, 1A, as we chase the boundary around the site. We're looking for crucial dating evidence here. Down at Trench 3, we're still trying to interpret these 2 ditches. At least we can now date them.
What is actually coming together really well, in that ditch there that Ray's got, look at that. That's our sherd of Ipswich ware, 720, 850.
Right.
And that almost certainly makes that nice Middle Saxon ditch.
Right.
This feature, on the other hand, has got medieval pottery coming out of it.
Yeah.
And not only that, you can demonstrate it stratigraphically. Ray, can you point out where the cut of our medieval ditch is? You see it runs up that, just that finger of yellow. I'm sure you can see that, Mick. And so in other words, we've got both the pottery and the stratigraphy coinciding.
That's great, isn't it? Really good. So we're going to do is clean this one out as well?
Oh yeah, we got to take some out of that.
Right. Yeah, but that's brilliant, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Critical bit of dating.
Yeah.
So John Gator was right. This ditch is Saxon. But it sits just outside our boundary and doesn't join it. So we close Trench 3 and Phil moves up to Trench 5. In our Saxon village, Hugh is beginning to get his hands dirty.
This is especially chosen because it's fine, is it?
Yes, it's got very fine pieces, and we'll pick out the fine detail in the wax.
Good stuff, is it, Victor, this clay?
It's very good stuff. But go easy, you know, you spend hours on those.
He's making a mould by wrapping the wax tablet up in clay.
How am I doing?
Hey, that's pretty good.
This mould will be hardened in the fire and the wax inside will melt. We then pour molten bronze into it to make the strap end. Up at Trench 5, just across from the church, it's getting pretty busy. We've found evidence of burials. We've uncovered 2 skeletons, and we have this strange little mound. What is this?
This is actually an oven, I think, because you see all the burning around it, and it's got a floor in it. And then there's these little holes around, stake holes, and what they've done is put a wickerwork frame over the top like that, rather like we've done down there, and plastered it with clay. And then, you know, you put your furs or your quick burning twigs and things, you get the thing hot, and then when it's hot, you shove your bread in.
This oven is a great find, and as it happens in the Saxon village, we were already partly through building one just like it when we found it. This gives a good idea of what it would have looked like.
We're in a little house, in fact, or part of a house.
Can we see any more of the house? Is that part of it?
Well, this must be the floor, because it's got no pebbles, and Niall thinks this is actually part of the wall running across here. Quite where it goes elsewhere, we can't see, because the trench is not big enough.
It is beautiful, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a nice thing to find.
What I don't understand, we ought to get down the incident room now, is that originally we said that we thought this was going to be a monastic site, didn't we? And now what we're finding is a rather sweet little village hut.
Yeah, but it still might be monastic because they've got burials cutting through that building with the oven.
Yeah.
That building with the oven is 12th century, judging by the pottery that was found all over the surface.
Yeah.
So at some stage they extend the graveyard out over that building, probably up to another road at another boundary, which is beginning to show up at the end of the trench.
Yeah.
And they cut through it with all these burials. But that doesn't mean that there's not something underneath the 12th century house. And there's not really any natural, that is the geology, showing through there. So there may well be, you know, a layer of occupation on top of what's there.
It's now early afternoon on day 2. So far, we've opened 5 trenches, and I'm having some difficulty in dealing with the scale of this site. We've also had loads of finds coming in, but they span an enormous period. So where's our strategy? We're coming to this really frustrating point that you get in every dig, where in each individual trench everyone's saying, yes, I know absolutely what's happening. But as far as the thing as a whole is concerned, nobody really seems to know. And I'm still missing the big picture. John, have you got any view of how this site's coming on? What might have been here?
I'm trying to get a picture. It's certainly high status. It could be a lord's residence. Personally, I think it's much more likely that it's monastic, with the churches and main buildings on the top of the hill, maybe with workers and craftsmen on the periphery down at the bottom of the hill.
But it looks like a lot of trade. It doesn't look like people living here somehow.
Yeah, but that's because on a site like this, like many archaeological sites, 9/10 of the evidence is rotted away. You know, all the wood's gone, all the leather, all the basket work, all that sort of stuff just disappears. We're left with the last bits that don't rot, the inorganic stuff.
Yeah. What about priorities?
Well, I think what we ought to do is make a real effort to get to the bottom of the big ditch, the big enclosure ditch, try and get a date on that, and if we can, get started on that area to the east of the church, where there might be a much earlier building, which we'd love to have a look at. Yeah.
This is the area east of the church that Andrew wants to look at. Geophysics have found a feature which may be an earlier church, on a different alignment from the present church. Big question. Why are you wearing this extraordinary ring?
I'm checking the alignment of the standing church with a compass, and it seems it's pretty close, or in fact almost exactly, true west-east. Now, Norman rebuilders quite often realigned churches, so they were closer to west-east. The eastern feature we've got in the geophysics is on a different alignment, and that might give us the early alignment of both churches before that one was rebuilt.
And how might that tie in with the line of churches which we're looking for on the other side?
Well, it would be part of it. You could perfectly well have 2, 3, even more churches, with 2 close together here and another church out to the west.
So we open Trench 6, just east of the church.
Well, that'd be nice if that is wall foundation. Potentially on the right line.
Is it?
Perhaps there's an earlier church building here. Meanwhile, Phil's looking at a very early find.
Tell us all about it. Well, I mean, that's a little barbed and tanged arrowhead, isn't it? Early Bronze Age, isn't it? About, what? 2,500 BC, 2000 BC, something like that. Beautiful. It is in very, very good condition. Consider it been in the ground for, what, 4,500 years, something like that.
How do you know how old it is?
Oh, barbed and tanged arrowheads are one of your classic flint implements. I mean, you know, they are the archetypal arrowhead, and they come in in the very early stages of the Bronze Age. And as soon as you see one of these things, you know instinctively where they are. A beautiful find.
Well, Harry's the man who found it.
You're the guy who found it, are you? Well, look, can you find some more? Because you're doing my health the world of good.
Across the site, Carenza's still chasing the boundary of our enclosure. Her 2 trenches have found this side without finding dating evidence. Now she's trying over here. Trouble is, she got a bit carried away. This is the longest trench we've ever opened on Time Team.
Look here, I've got material here. I thought it was burning.
Oh yeah, all this black
all
stuff.
This black stuff.
Yeah.
I've got the geophysics back in here. They've put the magnetometer across it. They say it's not burning.
Right.
So what we think it is now, what it is, it's organics which are rotting with no air.
Oh right, so underwater.
It's underwater. I'm in the middle of the estuary here.
Right, so that's this idea of the whole area being
This
sort of inlet.
This would have been underwater. And as you go up the trench, there's nothing in here of occupation. It's all sort of, it's just estuary.
Oh wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
you found
it's
it.
good, isn't it? Everything, so as far as I can see, everything that side of this, basically a ditch, is estuary. And here I've got another ditch, very similar to the other one.
But I mean, they're so similar, aren't they? It's that sort of clay, chalky bank.
Yeah, yeah.
And then that ditch about 5 metres wide again with that black fill.
There's some differences in it, but I think a lot of the differences are the fact that we've got water coming at us here. Over there, we're on the hill, there's no water coming. Here, we've got water coming at us. So it's actually forming sort of a water defence.
So we now have some shape to this site. We know that banks were on this side up here, and on this down here, holding back the sea. But what might it have looked like in Saxon times?
Oh yes, look at that.
Lovely. John, does that tell us about our line of churches?
It shows the 2 churches we were hoping for. We've got to remember that we don't yet have evidence for that church. What we do seem to be getting is indications that there may be an easternmost church that would have been just about there.
So Victor might have to get his rubber out?
I think possibly, yes. Well, we'll see. We know so little about what went on in these enclosures, but it does seem likely that there were big open spaces with agricultural activities going on.
But we're fairly clear that it's got marshes and boggy areas and probably some sort of access by water like that, although it may have been a little bit further away.
The other thing, of course, that's coming up is evidence for industrial activity in this sort of area, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we'll just have to get Victor to rub that bit out, put some industrial activity in there, and then it's perfect. Yeah. Well done.
I'm good at rubbing out.
Over at the Saxon village, things are hotting up. The flask is ready for the molten liquid bronze.
What sort of temperature are we trying to get to here, Russell?
1,000 degrees plus.
1,000 degrees?
Absolutely. Right then, shall we see if it's molten?
What are we expecting to see under that lid if all has gone well?
A lot of liquid bronze.
Are we looking at liquid bronze?
Liquid bronze to me.
Excellent.
Can you get the rock, Ben? The flask?
So we're going to go to fill up a flask now.
Stop pumping.
Steady. That is hot. Bit of charcoal falling in, is that a problem?
No problem.
Wow, look at that. That is pouring. Whoa!
Whoa!
Fill her up, fill her up.
It's coming out.
Damn. Oh dear, split flask.
Yeah. These are the breaks.
Luckily you've got some more.
We have indeed.
Keep trying.
We've got 5 more flasks. We've got 10 more hours. We can do it.
We'll get there in the end. Don't worry about it, we'll have another go.
Back at Trench 5, we're drawing the oven before lifting it.
Oh, Margaret, how's it going?
And Margaret's picking over the bones we found earlier.
We've got 2 graves here, as you can see, but unfortunately the human remains are incomplete in both of them.
They look in very good condition.
Yeah, the bone's very, very strong, very firm. No feet, apart from the big ankle bones, which is not unusual in archaeological sites.
Can you tell very much from what we got here?
Not really, no, because we haven't got enough material.
This poor old fellow down here had only got his head left.
Yeah, no, but he has actually got rather a distinguished face.
Has he?
He's got a magnificent nose here. If you can see these brow ridges, they're very marked, you know, which again is very clearly male. And this is the sort of start of the nasal bones here, which suggests he's got a really high bridged nose, which usually goes with being a fairly prominent feature. And he's also got a remarkable chin. I don't think I've seen quite such a pointed, thrusting forward chin in somebody with teeth for a long time. So I think he would have been quite a distinguished looking person.
Sounds like a sort of Mr. Punch.
And this is what we think he looked like. Meanwhile, at Trench 6, our hunt for an earlier church building is just becoming more and more frustrating.
Well, this trench has raised our hopes and then dashed them, sadly. If you look in the trench here, earlier on today we found this very hard rock, which we scraped this off and it looked very much like a wall, and we got very excited. The only trouble is that the wall actually kept going and going and going. So, in fact, it actually extended out and out. Now, it's just a lump of the bedrock coming out the ground. So we were very excited and then we were very disappointed. So I have to say that despite our best efforts and the geophysical's confidence, we haven't actually got a great deal.
Now, what I don't understand is when I was here about 20 minutes ago, this trench only went up to there. All this is new. What's happened?
Well, we decided to extend it and go down a bit.
Because?
Well, because we weren't getting anything in there.
Why not?
Well, I wasn't here, but I think we didn't really dig it long enough, I think, is the answer.
There was a slight ambiguity about the actual position of the geophysical anomaly.
A slight ambiguity. Look, I'll show you, excuse me treading on your trench, just to show them. Originally, it was thought that the line that this new building might take was over here. We now think that it was more like over there. Is that right?
We knew it was going that way on the geophysics. We just didn't take it quite far enough that way.
Somebody put the trench in wrong.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. And more of a margin for error is what I'd like to put
Anyway,
forward.
we've got to take it down a bit more yet because it's not really showing anything at this end, is it?
No, it's still a little inconclusive, but we are still exhausting every last possibility because it's so interesting, this trench, potentially.
It's the end of day 2, and the Saxons are having a party. Spit roast hare and buttered worts. Just what we need at the end of a long day. Oh, and a cheese called Stinking Bishop. But there's also some mead, which helps. This enormous site is beginning to take some shape now. We know from the coins that there were Saxons here, and we know that there was an enclosure ditch. Tomorrow we need to find dates and prove that this was a Saxon settlement. We've now got about 10 trenches operating, but the key ones are really all around here. And I, for one, I don't know about you, was getting pretty confused about what might be each one. So I've armed myself with this grizzly old archaeologist.
Hey, steady on.
And
steady
with a grid to try and work out what's in each one. Now, this is Trench 4 that we've just walked
That's
through,
it,
isn't it?
down north of the church.
Just about here. So,
That's it, yep.
Trench 4, Trench 4, Trench 4, in which we have Carenza.
Well,
Tell us all.
You remember we put in this trench initially to find the ditch, which we did just where you've walked down from. That seems to be a small enclosure going around the church. Down this end now we're finding huge amounts of medieval pottery from a feature that seems to be cut into the sand, and it's what we think it is a quarry for sand to build the church. It's medieval rubbish, it's a medieval landfill site basically, but it seems that the pottery is the same date as the building of the church, and it's earlier than the trench up there, so there's a shift in the settlement.
This is trench, what, 6 is it over here, Nick?
6 and 7 up the top, yeah.
So why did we dig this one?
We dug 6 because we had a geophysical anomaly which we thought might be an eastern church, east of the present one.
Yeah.
And we were interested in this line of churches. But in fact, Neil, what do we get?
Well, where the geophysical anomaly suggested there might be a feature, we found nothing. So we've just got pure sand and no church.
And then we've got 7 out at the front here, which runs off it.
You can see that very large ditch that we're digging out. And this is the ditch that seems to go round the church. We've got some quite nice pottery coming out from the upper levels. This is 14th century green glaze pottery.
Yeah.
But that's from the top. So it doesn't actually help to date when the bottom of the ditch was filled in. So we're digging right down to the bottom at the moment.
Right.
Okay, then.
Okay. Now we're going on to Phil's trench, is it?
Yeah, 5 round the corner here.
And what was the point of putting that in?
The point of that one was to test the idea of whether there were actually churches, other churches, going along this ridge in a line.
Yeah.
And so we thought we'd look at one area and see if we'd got any evidence of that. And of course, as is usual, there's rather more in it. It's rather more interesting than we thought.
In what way is it more interesting? Well, we can ask Phil.
We can ask Phil, yeah.
Phil, what have we got here?
We're looking really good here, actually, Tony. What it looks like is we've got 3 phases of activity here. The earliest one are these human burials, which we think might well be Saxon. And then they are replaced by the oven and this wall foundation, this cobble wall foundation. So we've got the burials, then we get the domestic, and then you can see that they revert back to put in human burials, and you can see how they may cut into that wall. There's a lot happening here. People are moving in and moving out.
So what do we do with it now?
Well, the main thing is carry on excavating it, needless to say, record it, and then lift it. I mean, we've got to get the whole story right the way through.
Why do we lift it, mate?
Well, there's still a possibility here, a good possibility, I think, that there might be earlier structures or buildings under what you can see now.
Why is that? Why do you say that?
Well, we're not down to natural anywhere, are we,
No,
Phil?
not really. There's still a lot of disturbance.
So anything under here is earlier than 12th century?
It's got to be earlier than 12th century.
Yeah.
And if we were to get post holes or beam slots or anything that would indicate buildings, that would be absolutely fantastic.
So our site now looks like this. We have a boundary ditch on the outside. We have an inner enclosure around the church with pottery and industrial activity just outside it. And we have a building to the west of the church which needs further exploring. Meanwhile, Stuart has now found the area where the island joined the mainland. It looks a bit dubious to me, but he takes Sandi out to show her that it's there.
You've got me out here because Tony thinks you're barking mad and you think you might persuade me. This is the truth of it, isn't it?
That's right. I'm always having trouble convincing Tony these things exist. But if you look over here,
right,
it's a bit of high ground. Take my word for it for the minute.
Okay.
It's high ground. Behind you can see it's actually going down. You can see that there. It's quite a long slope.
Yep.
But you can't see over the other side, but it is dropping down.
Okay.
Now in areas like this, there is a technique for trying to help you see these things on the ground without geophysics, without aerial photography and all the rest of it.
Right, what's
so I'm
that?
going to invite you to lie down.
Darling,
with me,
so
please.
unexpected.
Get down.
It's lovely.
If you get yourself
Ow!
from,
Oh!
what have you found?
No, it's...
And just look at the horizon in front of you.
Oh, it suddenly looks like a proper hill, doesn't
Right,
it?
now just raise yourself up gently.
Right.
And can you see how you can, immediately in front of you, about 10 metres away, there's a little ridge. Can you see it?
Yes, I can, yeah.
And go down again. Up.
It's a fitness regime.
But if you continue to do that, you can see there's an earthwork, and you can see lumps and bumps in there once you start to do it. You don't see those walking around. You've got to get flat on it. So
is that a natural land bridge or something they made?
The whole thing is a natural land bridge. You can see over there where the hedge goes up. It actually comes from there right up to the island. But on this land bridge, there are various earthworks as well. They may have something to do with the site up there. But
I believe you, even if Tony thinks you're mad.
Thank you. Do you want to do some more, or have you had enough of this?
No, let's do some
Good fun, isn't it? The more you do it, the more you see it. So if you see a strange man in a stubble field, going up and down like this. You've a fair idea what he's up to.
Fabulous.
What am I doing here?
Over at Trench 4, we've called in a local pottery expert to help date our finds.
There's a complete lack of glazed wares here. The glazed wares start 1180. There isn't any glazed ware, therefore this assemblage has to start before 1180. And you appear to have the full range of domestic pottery here. You've got the spouted pitcher, which would be used for...
That's the spout?
Yes, and just see the handle there, or where the handle's broken off, yeah?
Come off.
There's large pieces of large storage jars.
And this one huge, because there's no curve on that, is there?
No, I mean this vessel would have been 2 or 3 feet high easily.
So it could have been sort of this high off the ground?
Yeah, for certain, yeah.
Good God. And
yeah.
for what, water?
Water, flour, anything really. They were possibly even used as urinals in some cases, or mouse traps.
Oh, mouse traps?
Found them buried in the floors of cellars, so the mice would fall into them and they wouldn't be able to get out again. So
gosh, you might get a huge number of mice in something
I would
that's
think so,
happening.
yeah. We've also got bits of cooking pots here. There's, you can see these 2 pieces are heavily encrusted with soot on the outside.
They're all blackened, aren't they?
Yeah, see the much lighter colour if you turn them
Yeah.
over. So that would have sat on the fire, possibly for boiling water in it, cooking food. We do get the residues of these things analysed and we can get some idea of the diet at the time.
So basically we're talking settlement and lots of it
I'm
around
absolutely
here.
certain of this, I think. Yeah, you've got a lot of pottery, a lot of big pieces of pottery, and it's all local stuff and it's all broadly contemporary
And
with the
these are
church.
the people who were living here while the church
Yeah,
was being built.
I'd be certain of this.
So this pottery gives us evidence of Norman occupation, but still no sign of Saxons living here. Down at the Saxon village, we may have a bronze cast for our strap end.
We're ready to go. We're going to crack this flask open, and with a bit of luck,
timing.
there'll be some bronze strap ends in here.
If this is...
Oh yes, we've got a bit of bronze something.
That's actually got a pattern on it.
And this is it. Hugh's next job is to decorate it in the style of the times. It's a complicated twiddly job, not without its problems.
3 panels. I'd like to pick up the piece nearest you.
This one here.
Yeah.
There we go.
And drop it into the end panel.
Oh God, I've dropped it. God, I don't know how you've got. You must have the patience of a saint to do this. We're never going to find it. Watch where it flies next. Oh, there we go. Which way round? Like that?
Yeah.
There we go. I don't think I'd make a master craftsman. How's that?
With practice,
That's not bad.
that's not bad.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I've
Leave
seen
that
better.
there?
Looking
good. I'm sure you've seen better, Russell. I'm sure you do better every day.
With 3 pieces in place, we only have to add the final decorative niello. And then it's into the oven to harden it up.
It's gone there.
Yep.
Oh, wonderful. You've got the geophysics over the air photo. That's fantastic.
In the incident room, Carenza and Phil are trying to work out where to go next in our hunt for the
So we've got
boundary.
the church in the middle here. And, well, this is the boundary we've been chasing round that we're wondering if it goes all round the church. We've got it here and here in sections and here. And the air photograph shows it coming around here. And obviously this is the same thing carrying on in the geophysics. What we don't know is what happens after that.
The logical thing, I suppose, is actually we really want to know what's happening to your enclosure ditch down there.
I want to know whether it comes around and encloses the church in a huge area. I think I'll speak to John and Chris and see if they can do some more. If they can, that might give us a target. If not, I think we might just put a long trench in and try and find it anyhow.
I think that'd
get it
work
curving
well.
round.
Yeah.
This is the area geophysics are looking at. Although time's running out, John is having one last attempt at finding a date for our boundary ditch. He's in a desperate race against the clock.
Well, I've certainly got a 70 there. I'm dropping down 50s, 40s.
But back at Trench 5, there's an exciting development.
What we've got is this amazing skeleton. It's only just come up. And importantly, it goes underneath the 12th century settlement. We've even got 10th, 11th century pottery to go with it. It's a complete skeleton. It's right at the bottom of the sequence. And more importantly, we can say exactly how it died. Go on, Margaret, tell him.
He's literally been lobbed across the forehead with somebody with a very heavy, sharp-edged sword. He's sliced off that chunk of bone, which has been pushed back into his hair and his skin, and it would have killed him. There's no question that that was the cause of this man's death.
Poor chap. and you say it's almost a unique thing?
This is very, very unusual pathology. To actually have the slice of bone that's been slashed off retained, presumably within the soft tissue, is really unusual. It makes it a very important skeleton.
Of equal or more importance is what on earth this person, what the context of that is. Is that a battle victim? Or is it somebody a result of a Viking
Whoever
raid?
did that
Or?
knew how to use a sword. This isn't two guys who'd got drunk one night and had a bit of a tiff. This is serious swordsmanship.
It's a very difficult cut to make.
Yeah.
That's great! Yeah. But the important thing is we've got earlier than 12th century evidence of burials on the site.
So this trench has turned out to be crucial, and the layers help us with our story. These skeletons on the top are probably early medieval. The building with the oven dates from the 12th century. It's too big to be a house, but it's very possible it was monastic. And right at the bottom, we have a Saxon man. This all helps us paint a wider picture. We can say that there were burials from the Norman churchyard stretching out to about here. We know that there was a large building here. And in the early 12th century, when the church was being built, there was a quarry here from which they took sandstone to use in its construction. And there may well have been a bell pit here. At the Saxon village, our strap end is finished, and it's been quite a challenge to make it in time. This was the one it was modelled on, the one found on the site. This was our strap end as we last saw it, baking. And here is our finished product, which I think is a pretty good attempt. But we're not quite finished. Geophysics have come up with some great looking results, and we've two last trenches in. They're sitting across a round feature and the intersection of these two ditches, and they're producing results. Let's have a look at the geophys, John.
Basically, this side of the church, Tony, you can see all the blue and yellow, and that just indicates industrial activity. And there's an immense area here where it's chock-a-block full of industrial work. And we've homed in on this one anomaly, which we believe to be a kiln, and, well, we've proved to be right.
Why is it new, John? Why is it exciting?
It's a wonderfully clear result here that we've got for this ditch, and that's very important because enclosing ditches are one of the most significant and distinctive features of Middle Saxon monastic sites. They've been found on several others.
Absolutely, we've got some fantastic finds. I know this is very small, but this is Middle Saxon pottery. This is Ipswich ware.
What's Middle Saxon?
Well, 650 to 850, that sort of time.
Yeah.
And it's right bang in what we used to call the Dark Ages.
So are you saying you think now that there was a monastery here?
I think there probably was. I don't think we can be certain, but it seems to me it fits very clearly into a general framework of sites that are in prominent positions, are enclosed, have got prominently sited churches.
And over at the other trench, we're also getting some results. Our last chance for a date.
Andrew, hi. This is the trench across this ditch we've been following really all weekend. At last, we've got masses of stuff coming out of it. Masses of bone, shell, slag, and finally some good early dating evidence. Look at this.
Aha, now that's more like it. Gosh, yeah.
That's a Saxon loom weight, isn't it?
That's a fired clay, sort of pottery, Saxon loom weight, and the shape of it suggests to me that that's more likely to be 8th and 9th centuries than either earlier or later. So that's just the right sort of date that we were hoping for.
So this would have been hanging off the bottom of somebody's loom in the 8th century and basically gives us an 8th century date for the whole of this boundary ditch.
A bit of luck, that's right, yeah.
It's fantastic,
I'm
so
wonderful,
pleased.
Wonderful.
This loom weight is a crucial piece of evidence. It gives us a Saxon date for occupation. Saxons were living here. We know from this pottery that people were cooking with these pots and using them for drinking and for storage in the 8th and 9th centuries. The coins tell us that there were wealthy people here in the early 8th century. And the loom weight from the same period shows us that they were weaving their clothes here. The fact that we found this at the bottom of the ditch that surrounds the site also gives us an 8th century date for our enclosure. 1200 years ago, inside this enclosure were fields, animals, workshops and houses, all of which may have been serving a monastery building. People have been walking across this field for at least 4,500 years. Someone dropped an arrowhead on it. Others dropped coins and left bits of domestic debris behind. And we know that someone came to a rather gruesome end here. And now, 1200 years after the event, we can reveal what happened. He was killed by someone on horseback using a heavy sword. The horseman was travelling at speed. Our victim died instantly.